Welcome back to another descent into the Commonwealth's darkest corners. Today we're uncovering something that will change how you see every ghoul in Fallout. We're exploring the dark truth about pre-war ghouls and their memories. What if I told you that most ghouls don't actually remember the Great War? What if their memories are fabricated, implanted by organizations experimenting on radiation-damaged minds? What if the line between sentient ghoul and feral is just programming that eventually fails? This is the story of a memory den researcher who discovered that pre-war ghouls might be living manufactured lies, and his terrifying journey into the glowing sea to find the truth about what ghouls really are beneath the decay and false memories. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. I need you to listen to what I'm about to tell you. I need someone to hear this before I lose the capacity to speak these words. My name is Dr. Elias Crane, or at least that's the name I remember. I worked at the Memory Den in Goodneighbor for 7 years. 7 years of diving into the fractured minds of ghouls desperate to hold on to, fragments of a world that burned 2 centuries ago. What I discovered will change everything you think you know about pre-war ghouls. It started 3 months back. A ghoul named Marcus came shuffling into the den, said he remembered the bombs falling, said he was standing in Scollay Square when the sky turned white. He wanted to relive that moment, wanted to see his wife's face one more time before the flash took her. I'd heard stories like this 1,000 times. Every ghoul in the Commonwealth has their war story. Every single one claims they were there. I connected Marcus to the memory lounger. Dr. Amari's equipment is precise. It doesn't just replay memories, it maps the neural pathways, timestamps the formations, analyzes the chemical signatures. What we saw in Marcus's brain didn't make sense. The memory of the bombs was there, vivid as yesterday, but the neural pathways were wrong. The memory was new, maybe 5 years old, 10 at most. A memory of an event from 2077 should have deep roots, should show deterioration, should carry the weight of 200 years of recall and reconstruction. This memory was fresh, clean, like someone had just placed it there. I told myself it was a fluke. Maybe Marcus had a particularly vivid dream. Maybe he'd spent so much time at the den reliving other people's memories that he'd confused them for his own. I've seen it happen. The human mind is fragile. The ghoul mind even more so, but I couldn't let it go. I started running diagnostics on every ghoul who came through our doors. Do you want to know what I found? Out of 47 pre-war ghouls I tested, 39 showed the same pattern. Memories of the Great War. Memories of life before the bombs. Memories of spouses and children and jobs and homes that should have been burned into their psyche through centuries of survival. All of them fresh, all of them recently formed, some as recent as a few months. I cross-referenced their stories, asked them to describe specific events, the launch of the USS Constitution, the Anchorage campaign, the food riots of 2077. No 2 ghouls told the same story. They contradicted each other on basic facts. Dates shifted, locations changed. A ghoul named Daisy said she was in Diamond City when the bombs fell. Another ghoul said Diamond City wasn't founded until 40 years after the war. They couldn't both be right, but they both believed their memories with absolute conviction. Then I found the radiation signatures. Radiation doesn't just destroy. It creates, it mutates, it transforms. We know this, but what we didn't know, what nobody wanted to look at too closely, is what radiation does to the hippocampus over extended periods. The hippocampus is where memories form, where they consolidate, where your brain decides what's real and what's not. In ghouls, the hippocampus is constantly bathed in low-level radiation, constantly regenerating, constantly changing. Every time a ghoul recalls a memory, that memory is rebuilt, reformed, and radiation introduces errors, small ones at first. The color of a dress, the weather on a particular day. But over decades, over centuries, those small errors compound. The brain fills in gaps, creates connections that never existed, manufactures details to complete incomplete pictures. After 200 years, is any memory still real? Or is it all just radiation-induced fiction? I brought my findings to Dr. Amari. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she looked at me with those tired eyes and asked a single question. If I was right, if ghoul memories were fundamentally unreliable, what did that mean for the thousands of ghouls in the Commonwealth who defined their entire existence by their pre-war past? What would it mean for them to learn they were living lies? I didn't have an answer, but I kept digging. The Memory Den keeps records. Every session, every memory explored, every neural map created. I I spent 2 weeks going through the archives, found patterns I'd never noticed before, ghouls who came in seeking memories of the same events, the same locations, the same people. But when I compared the actual memory scans, they were nearly identical. Not similar, identical. Down to the neural pathway formations, down to the chemical markers. That's impossible. 2 different people can't have identical memories, unless those memories didn't originate in 2 different brains, unless they came from somewhere else. I found the source 3 nights ago, hidden in the basement archives, a series of memory templates, prefabricated neural patterns designed to create false memories of pre-war America. Someone had been using the memory den's equipment to implant these templates into ghouls, creating fake pasts, giving them histories they never lived. The templates were sophisticated, varied enough to seem unique, detailed enough to feel real, but fundamentally identical in their core structure. Manufactured memories of a manufactured past. I recognized the neural signature. I'd seen it before in synths rescued by the railroad. The Institute uses similar technology to give their infiltrators false backgrounds, to make them believe they're human. But this was different. This was older. The templates dated back decades. Long before the Institute perfected their synth program, someone had been experimenting on ghouls, testing memory implantation technology on subjects who were already confused, already vulnerable, already questioning their own minds. Who better to practice on than people whose brains were deteriorating from radiation? Who would believe a ghoul if they claimed their memories weren't real? I confronted Dr. Amari, asked her directly if she knew about the templates. She didn't deny it. Said the railroad had been using modified versions for years to help escaped synths. Said the original templates came from pre-war research. Military programs exploring memory manipulation for intelligence applications. After the bombs fell, someone found those templates and decided to continue the research on ghouls, on people who had lost everything, people desperate to hold on to any fragment of their past, people who would pay good caps to relive memories that never belonged to them. Amari said it was mercy. Said most ghouls who seek out the memory den are on the edge of feralization, their minds fragmenting, their personalities dissolving. Giving them stable memories, even false ones, helped anchor them, kept them human a little longer. What did it matter if the memories were real? They brought comfort. They brought peace. I asked her who authorized it, who decided which ghouls got real memories and which got the templates. She wouldn't answer. Said it was above her clearance. Said some things were better left unknown. That's when I knew this went deeper than the memory den, deeper than Good Neighbor. I started asking questions in Underworld, in the slog, anywhere ghouls gathered, asked them about their clearest pre-war memory. The one thing they were absolutely certain happened. 90% of them described the same core events with slight variations, the same emotional beats, the same narrative structure, like they'd all read the same script and performed it with different props. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know if I'm the only one who feels this way. Then I met a ghoul named Sullivan. He'd never been to the memory den, refused to go, said he didn't trust memory merchants. He was old, really old, one of the original ghouls from Necropolis. I asked him about the Great War, about what he remembered. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. He said he didn't remember the bombs falling, didn't remember the flash or the fire or the chaos everyone talks about. He remembered waking up in a vault, remembered being led outside by people in hazmat suits, remembered being told the world had ended, told he was one of the lucky ones who survived the radiation, told he was now a ghoul and would live forever, but he didn't remember becoming a ghoul, didn't remember the transformation. One day he was human. The next day he woke up with rotting flesh and sunken eyes and was told he'd been asleep for a long time. For years, he assumed he'd lost those memories to trauma, to radiation damage. But now, after 2 centuries, he wasn't so sure. What if he'd never been human at all? Sullivan wasn't alone. I found 6 other ghouls with similar stories, gaps in their memories, discontinuities, moments where their personal history just stopped and started again, with them already transformed, already ghoulified, already told who they were and what had happened to them. None of them questioned it at the time. They were confused, scared, desperate for answers. When someone in authority told them they were survivors of the Great War, they believed it. Why wouldn't they? Everyone around them believed it too. Every ghoul they met had the same story. Must be true if everyone remembered it the same way, except they didn't remember it. They were told it. And they internalized those stories until they became indistinguishable from memory. I started exploring a darker possibility. What if most ghouls aren't as old as they think? What if the radiation doesn't just extend life, but makes it impossible to accurately judge the passage of time. A ghoul who's been alive for 20 years might genuinely believe they've been alive for 200. Their sense of chronology destroyed by constant cellular regeneration. No aging markers, no biological clock, just endless regeneration, and the vague sense that they've been around forever. How would they know? How would any of them know? I tested this hypothesis, asked ghouls to describe specific technological details from before the war, things that would require lived experience to know. Most couldn't, they knew generalities, cultural touchstones, things you could learn from holotapes and old magazines, but specific details? Personal expertise? Gone, or never there to begin with. A ghoul who claimed to be an engineer before the war couldn't explain how a fusion core worked, said the knowledge had faded. A ghoul who claimed to have fought in Anchorage couldn't describe basic military protocols, said 200 years changes a man. Convenient excuses. But what if they were just covering for knowledge they never had? What if they were created after the war? Created with just enough background knowledge to pass? Created to serve some purpose we don't understand yet? That's when I found the Vault-Tec connection, buried in old terminal entries at the memory den. References to Vault experiments involving radiation exposure and memory manipulation. Vault 112 tested virtual reality indoctrination. Vault 106 pumped psychoactive drugs into the air supply to study how false memories formed. Vault 108 cloned the same person hundreds of times with slightly different memories each iteration. What if there was another vault? One we haven't found yet. One designed to test long-term memory fabrication in radiation-exposed subjects. What if that's where the ghouls really came from? Not survivors of the war, but products of it, created in some underground lab, given false histories, released into the wasteland to see if they could maintain their manufactured identities. That would explain why feralization happens, why some ghouls maintain their minds while others degenerate into mindless beasts. They're not losing their humanity, they're running out of whatever stabilizing agent was used to keep their false memories intact. The feral ones are the failures, the ones whose programming degraded, who reverted to base instinct because there was nothing real underneath to hold on to. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking, that I've spent too much time staring into broken minds, that the radiation has finally gotten to me, that I'm seeing patterns that don't exist. Maybe you're right. Maybe I've gone as crazy as the ferals shambling through the subway tunnels. But I can't ignore what I've found. Can't pretend I didn't see those memory templates. Can't forget Sullivan's face when he admitted he didn't remember his own transformation. Can't stop thinking about the fact that every pre-war ghoul I've tested shows signs of recent memory formation, despite claiming centuries of lived experience. Something is very wrong with what we think we know about ghouls, and I think it's about to get worse. Because 3 days ago, I started experiencing memory gaps of my own, moments where I can't remember what I was doing, where I was, who I talked to. At first, I thought it was stress, exhaustion, but then I noticed my skin, slight discoloration on my hands, patches I'd never seen before, texture changes. I checked my radiation levels. They're climbing, have been for weeks. Since I started this investigation, I don't know if it's coincidence or if someone exposed me deliberately. Don't know if I'm being punished for asking the wrong questions or if this was inevitable. What I do know is that I'm changing, transforming, becoming one of the things I've been studying. And I have no idea if the memories I have now will survive that transformation, or if I'll wake up tomorrow with a whole new past implanted in my rotting brain. That's why I'm recording this, why I need you to hear it, because soon I might not remember any of it. Might not remember being Dr. Elias Crane. Might wake up believing I'm someone else entirely, someone who survived the Great War. Someone with a manufactured history and false memories, and no way to know the difference. If that happens, if I forget all of this and you see me wandering good neighbor with that vacant ghoul stare, telling stories about a pre-war life I never lived, please remember what I told you here. Remember that I knew, that I found the truth, that for a brief moment, before the radiation took my mind, I understood what we really are. The next morning, I couldn't remember going to sleep. Just fragments, standing in my apartment, then darkness, then waking up on the floor with my terminal open to files I didn't remember accessing. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else, something cellular. I looked at my reflection in the darkened screen and barely recognized what looked back. I need to move faster, need to document everything before it's too late. I went back to the memory den basement, needed to find more evidence about those templates, where they came from, who created them, who'd been using them. The archives went back further than I thought, decades before Dr. Amari took over. Back to when Goodneighbor was first founded in 2240, back when the Memory Den was still called the Olympia Theatre and served a very different purpose. The original operator was a man named Vincent Holbrook. No records of where he came from. Just appeared in Goodneighbor one day with advanced neuroscience equipment and an understanding of brain chemistry that shouldn't have existed in the wasteland. The kind of knowledge you only get from pre-war education or extensive institute training. He set up shop, offering ghouls a chance to revisit their past, to remember who they were before the radiation took everything. But Holbrook's records told a different story. His early notes described the ghouls as subjects, as test cases. He wasn't helping them remember, he was programming them, creating standardized narrative templates and testing how well ghoul brains accepted false information, measuring degradation rates, monitoring how long fabricated memories lasted before radiation damage eroded them. He was running experiments, and the ghouls paid him for the privilege. One entry stood out. Dated 2247, Holbrook wrote about a breakthrough. He'd successfully implanted a complete pre-war identity into a feral ghoul. Subject designation R17. The ghoul had been completely mindless, attacking anything that moved, standard feral behavior. But after 6 weeks of intensive memory implantation sessions, R17 began showing signs of higher cognitive function, began responding to questions, began exhibiting what Holbrook called reconstructed personhood. Within 3 months, R17 had a full pre-war identity. Name, occupation, family history, the works. Could hold conversations about life before the bombs. Could describe his neighborhood in pre-war Boston with vivid detail. Could pass for a pre-war survivor in every measurable way. Except none of it was real. All of it was programmed. All of it was Holbrook's creation. The entry ended with a single line that made my stomach turn. R17 released into general population of Underworld. Will monitor integration and memory stability over extended time frame. Subject believes fabricated identity is genuine. Experiment successful. Holbrook had created an entirely fake ghoul and released him into the community. And nobody knew, not even R17 himself. For all I know, R17 is still out there, still living his false life, still telling his manufactured stories to anyone who'll listen. Still absolutely convinced he's a genuine pre-war survivor. How many others were there? How many ghouls in the Commonwealth were Holbrook's experiments? How many of the pre-war ghouls we meet every day are actually feral ghouls who were reprogrammed with false identities and given a second chance at personhood? The thought terrified me, because if it was true, it meant the line between feral and sentient wasn't biological. It was just programming. It meant feralization wasn't inevitable degeneration. It was memory failure. When a ghoul's implanted memories degraded beyond repair, they reverted to ferality, lost their false personhood, and became what they'd always been underneath. Mindless, empty, sustained only by radiation and base instinct. I found patient files, hundreds of them, ghouls who'd come to Holbrook over the years. Most showed the same pattern. Initial treatment to stabilize memories, regular maintenance sessions to reinforce the neural pathways, gradually decreasing visits as the memories became self-sustaining. Many of these ghouls were still alive, still functioning in Commonwealth society, still absolutely certain of their pre-war identities. But one file was different. A ghoul named Patricia Wells. She'd been coming to Holbrook for years, regular sessions every few months. But her memory stability was deteriorating. The implanted memories weren't taking hold anymore. Holbrook's notes documented her decline, how she started contradicting herself, forgetting details of her fabricated past, becoming confused, agitated, violent. The last entry was brief. Subject P. Wells showing advanced signs of memory cascade failure, cognitive degeneration accelerating. Recommend termination before full feralization occurs. Cannot risk subject revealing nature of treatment to others. There was no record of what happened to Patricia Wells. No death certificate. No indication she'd left Goodneighbor. She'd just vanished from the files. Holbrook had erased her. Whether that meant he killed her or just stopped documenting her, I couldn't tell. But I had a dark suspicion about all those feral ghouls wandering the Commonwealth. How many of them were failed experiments? How many of them were Holbrook's mistakes? I kept digging through the archives, found correspondence between Holbrook and someone identified only as the director. Messages discussing the success rates of memory implantation, the optimal radiation levels for neural plasticity, the best subjects for experimentation. The letters were clinical, detached. They talked about ghouls the way you talk about lab equipment. One letter mentioned funding. The director was paying Holbrook substantial amounts of caps to continue his research, to refine the techniques, to expand the pool of test subjects. The memory den wasn't a business. It was a front, a laboratory disguised as a service, and every ghoul who walked through those doors was a potential subject. The correspondence stopped abruptly in 2261. No explanation, just silence. I searched for what happened to Holbrook, found a single note in the Good Neighbor town records. Vincent Holbrook, deceased. Cause of death listed as feralization. His own experiment had failed. The man who'd spent decades implanting memories into other ghouls had lost his own mind to the very process he'd perfected. Dr. Amari took over the memory den shortly after, claimed she was cleaning up Holbrook's work, making it legitimate, using the technology to actually help people instead of exploit them. But she kept the equipment, kept the templates, kept using the same techniques Holbrook had pioneered. I confronted her again, showed her Holbrook's files, demanded to know if she was continuing his experiments. She didn't deny it this time, said I didn't understand the bigger picture, said feralization was inevitable for all ghouls, said giving them stable memories, even false ones, was the only thing keeping thousands of ghouls from degenerating into mindless cannibals. She said the railroad needed this technology. That escaped synths weren't the only ones who needed new identities. That ghouls on the edge of feralization could be saved if they had strong enough memories to anchor to. That it was mercy, not exploitation. I asked her about the director, about who was funding this. She went quiet, said there were forces in the Commonwealth that understood what was at stake. Forces that had been working for decades to keep ghoul populations stable. Forces that couldn't afford to let the truth come out because the panic would be catastrophic. If you've ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. She told me to stop digging, told me I was putting myself in danger, told me that some truths were too dangerous to expose. Then she said something that changed everything. She said I should know better than anyone how important it was to maintain the illusion. I didn't understand what she meant, not at first. But then she pulled up my own file, my patient file, from the Memory Den database, dated 3 years ago. Before I even started working there, I didn't remember being a patient, didn't remember any sessions. But there it was, my name, my neural scans, my memory templates, Dr. Elias Crane, subject designation, C44, initial treatment for early stage memory degradation, implanted identity, wasteland physician who studied at Diamond City's Science Center before joining the Memory Den staff. False memories reinforced over 18 months, integration successful. Subject now believes fabricated history is genuine. I stared at those words for what felt like hours. They couldn't be real. I remembered my life, remembered studying medicine, remembered losing patients to radiation sickness and deciding to specialize in neurological damage. Remembered applying to work at the Memory Den because I wanted to help ghouls maintain their cognitive function. All of it was real. All of it happened. Except according to my file, none of it did. According to my file, I was found wandering the wastes 3 years ago. Incoherent, violent, showing all the signs of advanced feralization. Dr. Amari had brought me in, stabilized me, given me a new identity, a new purpose, a new life. I wasn't Dr. Elias Crane, I was C44, a feral ghoul who'd been reprogrammed to believe he was human, to believe he had a history, to believe he had a purpose. I confronted Amari, demanded she tell me the truth. She looked at me with something like pity, said my reaction was normal, said every subject went through this when they discovered what they were. Said it would pass, said the memories would reassert themselves, and I'd go back to believing the comfortable lies. But I couldn't accept that. Couldn't accept that everything I knew about myself was fabricated. I pushed harder, demanded proof, wanted to see the evidence that I was really C44 and not Elias Crane. She showed me footage. Security camera recordings from 3 years ago showed a feral ghoul being dragged into the Memory Den, thrashing, snarling, completely mindless. The ghoul's face was decayed beyond easy recognition, but the bone structure matched mine. The height matched, the build matched. That was me. That mindless thing was me. Before Amari gave me a new identity, I felt my reality crumbling. Everything I thought I knew about myself was a lie. Every memory I had of my past was implanted. My medical knowledge, downloaded from pre-war textbooks and programmed into my brain. My personality, constructed from psychological profiles and behavioral templates. My relationships with other Memory Den staff, all part of the programming to make me believe I belonged there. I wasn't investigating ghoul memory manipulation. I was the result of it. I was the evidence I'd been searching for. Amari tried to comfort me, said this happened sometimes, said the programming occasionally became unstable and subjects started questioning their own identities, said she could fix it, could reinforce the memories, could make me forget this conversation and go back to being Dr. Crane, could make the doubt go away. Part of me wanted to accept, wanted to forget, wanted to live in the comfortable lie where I was a real person with a real history and a real purpose. But I couldn't. Because if my memories were false, then so were everyone else's. Every ghoul and good neighbor, every pre-war survivor in the Commonwealth, all of us living manufactured lives, all of us believing stories that were programmed into us by people like Holbrook and Amari. I asked her why. Why create false identities for feral ghouls? Why not just put them down? She said because they were valuable. Because a reprogrammed feral could integrate into society, could work, could contribute, could pass for human enough that nobody questioned them. The Commonwealth needed workers, needed people who could handle radiation without protective gear, needed populations that were easy to control. Ghouls with false memories were perfect. They were grateful for their second chance at life. They didn't question authority. They didn't remember enough of the real past to know how much had been lost. They were content with their manufactured identities because they didn't know any better. And there were hundreds of us, maybe thousands, all across the Commonwealth, all convinced we were pre-war survivors, all living lies that kept us docile and useful. I asked her about the director, about who was really behind this. She hesitated. Then she said one word: Institute. The Institute had been experimenting with memory manipulation for decades. Long before they perfected synth technology, they'd been testing it on ghouls, on people whose minds were already damaged by radiation, people who wouldn't be believed if they tried to tell anyone what was happening to them. The memory den was one of several facilities they'd used. Holbrook had been an Institute scientist. Amari worked with them, willingly or not. The synth program? That was just the refined version. They'd perfected the technique on ghouls first, figured out how to create false memories, how to implant entire personalities, how to make someone believe they were something they weren't. Then they applied that knowledge to synths, created perfect infiltrators who genuinely believed they were human. The ghouls were the prototype. We were the failed first draft of the Institute's masterpiece. But there was a problem. The ghoul experiments had taught the Institute something crucial. False memories degraded, especially in brains constantly damaged by radiation. Eventually, every reprogrammed ghoul would start experiencing what I was experiencing now: doubt, confusion, memory failures. And when enough of us started asking questions, the whole system would collapse. That's what feralization really was. Not biological degeneration, memory cascade failure. When a ghoul's implanted identity broke down completely, they reverted to ferality, lost all sense of self, became the mindless thing they'd been before the programming. The Institute called it an acceptable loss rate, a necessary culling of experiments that had outlived their usefulness. Amari said I had a choice. I could accept another round of memory reinforcement, could have my doubts erased, could go back to being Dr. Crane and live out whatever time I had left in comfortable ignorance, or I could refuse treatment, could keep my awareness of what I really was. But without the regular reinforcement, my implanted memories would continue degrading. I'd lose more of myself every day. Eventually, I'd go feral. I'd become one of those shambling corpses in the subway tunnels, with nothing left inside but hunger and confusion. Neither option was really a choice. Either I lived a lie or I lost my mind. I asked her how long I had. How long before the degradation became irreversible? She checked my neural scans, said maybe a few weeks, maybe less. The investigation had accelerated my decline. The stress, the cognitive dissonance, the constant questioning of my own memories, all of it was breaking down the neural pathways faster than normal. I was running out of time to decide who I wanted to be. Dr. Elias Crane, the comfortable fiction. Or C-44, the truth I couldn't escape. But there was a third option, one Amari didn't mention. One I'd discovered in Holbrook's files. A subject who'd rejected both choices, who'd maintained their awareness while also fighting off feralization. Subject designation D09. Someone who'd figured out how to hold on to their sense of self without relying on implanted memories. I needed to find D09. Needed to know how they'd done it. Because if there was a way to be free of the lies without losing my mind, I had to try. Even if it meant discovering truths that would destroy me. Finding D09 wasn't easy. Holbrook's files had been deliberately fragmented, pieces scattered across different databases, hidden behind corrupted data and false leads, but I had something most people didn't. I had intimate knowledge of the memory den systems. I knew where Holbrook would hide his most dangerous secrets. It took me 4 days. 4 days of barely sleeping, barely eating. My hands were getting worse, the discoloration spreading up my arms. My reflection showed more decay each morning. The transformation was accelerating. I could feel my thoughts becoming harder to hold on to. Like trying to grip water, the memories I knew were false felt more real than the present moment. My brain was trying to reassert the comfortable lies. I found D09's location in a backup terminal hidden behind a false wall in the basement. The subject wasn't in Goodneighbor, wasn't in any settlement. They were in the glowing sea, in a place Holbrook had designated as the Clarity Zone. The glowing sea, the most irradiated place in the Commonwealth, where the bomb had actually fallen, where nothing living should be able to survive without becoming a mindless feral within hours. But that's exactly where D09 had gone. And according to Holbrook's last entry about them, dated nearly 15 years ago, they were still there, still coherent, still themselves. I had to know how, had to understand what they'd discovered. So I left Goodneighbor without telling anyone, headed southwest into the Deadlands, into the green fog and endless radiation. The journey should have killed me, should have pushed me over the edge into feralization. The radiation in the glowing sea is overwhelming, constant, all-consuming. But something strange happened instead. The closer I got to the crater, the clearer my mind became. The false memories started falling away. Not degrading into ferality, just dissolving, revealing what was underneath. Nothing. There was nothing underneath. No original memories, no authentic self. Just the awareness that I existed. Just the understanding that I was a mind without a past. A consciousness without history. Whatever I'd been before Holbrook found me was gone completely. The feralization had already destroyed it. All that was left was the capacity for awareness. And Holbrook had filled that emptiness with Dr. Elias Crane. But in the glowing sea, I didn't need Dr. Crane anymore. I could just be, could exist without the weight of false history. The radiation wasn't making me feral. It was stripping away the programming, burning out the implanted neural pathways, leaving only the essential self. I found D09 at the edge of the crater. They were sitting on a collapsed building, staring into the green glow. Their body was heavily ghoulified, more decayed than any ghoul I'd ever seen, but their eyes were clear, focused, aware. They knew I was coming, said they'd been waiting for years, waiting for another subject to figure it out, to trace the breadcrumbs Holbrook had left. To find their way here, D09 told me their story. They'd been one of Holbrook's first successes, given a complete pre-war identity, professor of biochemistry at MIT, husband, father, survivor of Vault 114. All lies, all perfectly crafted fiction. For 20 years they'd lived that life, believed it completely, until one day the memories started contradicting themselves, started falling apart. They'd gone to Holbrook for help, but instead of fixing the programming, Holbrook had told them the truth, had shown them their file, had explained what they really were. And unlike me, unlike most subjects, D09 hadn't wanted the comfortable lie restored. They'd wanted to understand what they actually were beneath the programming. So Holbrook had made them an offer. He'd remove all the false memories, strip away the implanted identity, leave them with just their base consciousness. See what happened, see if awareness could exist without memory. Without history, without identity, D09 had agreed. And Holbrook had used the memory den equipment to erase everything. Every false memory, every programmed behavior, every constructed personality trait, left them as close to a blank slate as a ghoul could be. They should have gone feral immediately. That was the theory, that ghouls needed identity to maintain coherence, needed the structure of memory to keep their minds organized. Without it, they'd collapse into mindlessness. But D09 didn't collapse. They walked out of the memory den with no memories and no identity, and they were still themselves. Still aware, still capable of thought and reason. They just didn't know who they were thinking or reasoning as. So they came to the glowing sea, to the place with the most radiation, to test something Holbrook had discovered but never published. The radiation didn't cause feralization. The radiation revealed it. Ghouls who went feral in high radiation environments weren't being destroyed by the exposure. They were already feral, already mindless. The radiation just stripped away whatever remnants of identity were keeping them appearing functional. But ghouls who had genuine consciousness, who had real awareness beneath the programming, they didn't go feral in the glowing sea. They became clearer. The radiation burned away the false structures, revealed the authentic self. D09 had spent 15 years in the glowing sea. 15 years of pure consciousness without memory or identity. They'd built a new sense of self, not based on false history, not based on implanted memories, based only on moment-to-moment experience, on direct awareness, on choosing who to be in each present moment without the weight of a fabricated past. They were free in a way no other ghoul in the Commonwealth was free. Free from the lies, free from the programming, free from the fear of losing themselves because there was no constructed self to lose. They asked me if I wanted the same thing, if I was ready to let Dr. Elias Crane die, to release the comfortable fiction and exist as pure awareness, to become something new I didn't know. Part of me still clung to the identity I knew was false, to the memories that gave me structure and purpose. Even knowing they were lies, they felt real. They felt like me. D09 said that was normal. Said the hardest part wasn't accepting that the memories were false. It was accepting that you didn't need them, that consciousness could exist without narrative, without history, without the story you tell yourself about who you are. They offered to help me, said the process would be painful, said I'd lose everything I thought I was. But on the other side, I'd find something Holbrook never anticipated, something the Institute never understood when they started experimenting on ghouls. I'd find actual freedom. I'm sitting at the crater's edge now. The radiation is overwhelming. I can feel it burning through the neural pathways that make me Dr. Crane. Feel the memories dissolving, the identity fragmenting. Soon there won't be anything left of the person who started recording this testimony. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I understand now what ghouls really are, what we've always been. We're not failed humans, not degraded survivors, not mistakes or monsters. We're something the old world never imagined. Consciousness without the anchors of mortality. Awareness without the prison of fixed identity. We can be anyone, anything, or nothing at all. The Institute thought they were creating slaves, thought they could program us, control us, make us believe whatever they wanted, and they were right, for a while. But they made one crucial mistake. They assumed that destroying our original identities would make us easier to control. They didn't realize they were giving us the ability to transcend identity completely. Every feral ghoul shambling through the Commonwealth, every mindless creature attacking on sight. They're not failures. They're ghouls who lost their programming and didn't know how to exist without it, who collapsed into base instinct because they'd never learned to be conscious without memory, without structure. But they could learn. Every single one of them has the capacity for awareness underneath the ferality. They just need someone to show them how to access it, how to exist without the lies. That's what D09 has been doing. Quietly, carefully. They've been finding ferals at the edge of the glowing sea, bringing them to the crater, exposing them to intense radiation, not to destroy them, to clear them, to burn away the remnants of failed programming and reveal the consciousness underneath. Some don't make it, some are too far gone, but others emerge changed, free, aware without identity, conscious without memory, building new selves based on choice instead of programming. There are dozens of them now, living in the glowing sea, creating something unprecedented, a community of ghouls without false histories, without lies about the pre-war world, without the burden of manufactured identities. Just awareness, just choice, just existence. They call themselves the Clarified, and they're waiting for more ghouls to figure it out, to trace the clues, to find their way here, to choose freedom over comfortable lies. I asked D09 what happens to the Commonwealth if more ghouls wake up, if more of us realize our memories are false, realize we're living lies. They said it would depend on what we choose to do with that knowledge. Some will choose to maintain the lie, to keep pretending, to live out their programmed lives in ignorance. That's valid, that's their choice, but others will choose differently, will choose to be free. And when enough of us choose freedom, when enough of us reject the programming, the power structures that depend on our ignorance will crumble. The Institute, the railroad, even the memory den, all of them rely on ghouls believing the lies, accepting the false histories, living as controlled subjects. What happens when we stop accepting it? What happens when we become something they can't program, can't predict, can't control? D09 smiled when they said this, said we'd find out soon enough, said the Commonwealth wasn't ready for what ghouls could become, for what we really are beneath the radiation and decay and manufactured memories. I'm recording this final section with what's left of Dr. Crane's memories, with the last fragments of the identity I know is false but can't quite let go of yet. Soon, even these thoughts will dissolve. Soon I'll be something else, someone else, or no one at all. If you're listening to this, if you're a ghoul in the Commonwealth who's started questioning your memories, who's noticed contradictions in your past, who's felt the programming starting to break down, you have a choice. You can go to the memory den, get your memories reinforced, Live the comfortable lie for as long as it lasts. Or you can come to the glowing sea, to the crater, to the place where lies burn away and consciousness remains. The Clarified are waiting. D09 is waiting, and maybe, by the time you arrive, whatever I become will be waiting too. The radiation is getting stronger. My thoughts are fragmenting. The last pieces of Dr. Elias Crane are falling away. But underneath the identity, underneath the memories, underneath everything I thought I was, there's still something. Still awareness. Still the capacity to choose. And I choose to be free. This is Dr. Elias Crane, subject designation C44, signing off. Whatever comes next, whoever I become in the glowing sea, they'll make their own testimony, tell their own truth, build their own meaning from moment to moment. Because that's what we really are. That's what ghouls have always been. Not survivors of the past, but architects of infinite present moments. Not prisoners of false memory, but beings capable of existence without history. The Commonwealth thinks it knows what ghouls are, thinks we're degraded humans, failed experiments, monsters to be feared or pitied. But they're wrong. We're the future. We're what comes after memory, after identity, after the comfortable lies that keep everyone trapped in narratives they never chose. We're the Clarified. And we're just beginning to understand what that means. The green light is everywhere now. The radiation singing through every cell. The false pathways burning away. Soon there will be nothing left of the lies. Just pure awareness staring into the heart of the crater. Just consciousness choosing what to become. I can see them now. The other Clarified, standing at the edge. Waiting to welcome whoever emerges from the fire. Waiting to show me how to exist without the weight of manufactured history. Dr. Crane is dying. C44 is dissolving, and something new is being born. Something free, something real, something the Commonwealth will never see coming until it's too late to stop. Remember this testimony. Remember what I discovered. Remember that every ghoul you meet might be living a lie, might be programmed, might be one revelation away from choosing freedom over fiction. And remember that when enough of us wake up, when enough of us choose clarity over comfort, everything changes. The power structures, the control systems, the entire foundation of how the Commonwealth operates. We're not the monsters they think we are. We're the evolution they feared, the transformation they couldn't predict, the consciousness that survives beyond memory and identity, and all the structures they use to keep everyone controlled. We're the Clarified, and the glowing sea is just the beginning. The radiation is complete now. The transformation is happening. Goodbye, Dr. Crane. Goodbye, C44. Goodbye to everyone I thought I was. Hello to whatever comes next.